He is the manager of regional affairs for Latin America and the Caribbean at the Internet Society. And prior to joining ISOC, Mr. Osepa was the manager of regional relations Caribbean for ICANN. And prior to that, he was policy advisor for the Bureau of Telecommunications and Post in Curacao. And he also has operating company experience. And Shernon is one of those Caribbean men that we encountered with the internet. He would have to present in Dutch, in English, in Spanish, and so on. And I think the term he uses is that he could defend himself in English. So he probably tried to defend himself as he talks about the security and privacy issues in Internet of Things applications. I'll leave him to tell you all about the Internet of Things, and in fact the next two speakers will probably be mentioning the Internet of Things and the impacts it is having. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Shernon Osepa.
Okay, good morning to all. Good morning. Good morning. I think that's better. It's a pleasure and honor to be here in Belize. I think this morning when I was doing some exercise and walk around a bit, I did realize that I was in Belize, because wherever you go, people will say, okay, good morning, good morning, good morning. And I think this is one of the things that we should continue to keep in the Caribbean. I mean, a lot of places where you go, people don't even greet each other nowadays. So I think this is a very good virtue of Belize, by saying good morning, good afternoon, good night. And that is why I just wanted to test it if it's still true here. And I guess that's the case. Okay, my name is Shernon Osepa. I'm the manager of regional affairs for Internet Society for Latin America and the Caribbean. Basically, Internet Society is a global organization, focuses on three main areas. The first area is what we call internet-related standards. So you may have heard of, there are a lot of organizations out there working on standards. But there is one particular group, and that's the Internet Engineering Task Force. The only thing they do is basically to focus on how can we develop internet-related standards. And Internet Society is the organizational home of that particular group. In addition to that, we focus a lot on what we call policy development, and in that regard, we work with policymakers, of course, policymakers, governments, and all those who are involved with respect to policy development. And the third area where Internet Society is quite active, that's what we call capacity building and education. It's not only about coming with people from abroad to give a presentation, but we like to see our own people in the region to take the lead and to give a contribution to the development of the internet in the Caribbean and also in Latin America. And in that regard, I would like to talk with you today on, in that regard, I was just doing myself like this. That's a challenge, right?
Yes.
So okay. So I should look in that. So in that regard, I would like to talk with you a bit on what we call the Internet of Things and some security and privacy issues related to Internet of Things. Basically, nowadays the whole world is talking about the Internet of Things. So I would like to focus just a bit, because Bevel already did highlight it this morning. Always the Internet governs, so I'm not going to focus much on that. I would like to focus, just highlight a bit also what we call the Internet's three operational layers. and then I'll be focusing on Internet of Things overview, concepts, and drivers. And later on, there will be possibility to ask questions as well. How is the Internet governed? I think Bevel did highlight this morning. If you just take a look at some facts regarding the Internet nowadays, we can see that we have more than 3 billion people connected to the Internet. There are more than okay, this is me, not okay. So there are more than 950,000, let's say what we call million websites out there. Albert did highlight this morning regarding websites. So there are more than 1,000 what we call autonomous networks, all connected. More than 284 million domain names registered. From this number, more than 120 million are what we call the .coms, and more than 100 million are the CCTLDs, like .bc, .tt, Trinidad and Tobago, and so on and so on. Did you know, for example, that just during the last 30 seconds, $1.2 million were spent over the Internet? So this is big business. There is no central control body when we talk about the Internet. And normally, especially when talking with governments, they will say, okay, this will lead to chaos, right? But that's not the case, because the Internet is based on what we call the multi-stakeholder model, whereby you have governments, business community, civil society, technical community, all of them working together to make the Internet better. And we can see how effective the Internet is presently, based on how it has grown and how stable it is. When I'm talking about how stable the Internet is, I'm not talking about maybe the quality that you're receiving from your particular service provider. So that's another discussion. When I'm talking about this, how stable the Internet is, I'm talking about the domain name system that's there 24 hours a day, 365 or 366 days per year. There is something else that I think that we need to know, and each time I do use these slides, until I think it's no longer necessary, then we'll take it out. Because nowadays, if you ask someone what is the Internet, most people will say, okay, that's Facebook, right? But the Internet goes beyond Facebook. Facebook is an application. I don't want to use to say just application, because it's not just application. It's very powerful, so that's why it's application. But it remains an application. So the first thing, we need to have what we call a telecommunication infrastructure, be it wired, wireless, satellite communication. That's not important. We need to have a telecommunication infrastructure. And once we have a telecommunication infrastructure in place, then we go to the next level. And here you have where we have what we call the domain name system, which is based on the TCP protocol that Albert did highlight this morning. And once we have this domain name system up and running, and then we go to the highest level where we as human beings normally interact with the Internet. So here you will find Google, Twitter, Facebook, and so on. So, Internet of Things, so I'd like to focus now a bit on that. So what is basically Internet of Things? Basically, there are a lot of definitions out there when it comes to the Internet of Things. But generally speaking, we can say that that Internet of Things refers to scenarios where network connectivity and computing capability extends to objects, sensor, and everyday items not normally considered computers, allowing these devices to generate, exchange, and consume data with minimum human intervention. So basically, if we use this definition as a point of departure, then I think we should be looking at why does it matter? Why does Internet of Things matter? And then we need to break this down in 3 areas. we can look at the functionality. So what could be done with it? So what has been done with it so far? And as a value, what can be done with it as well? And as a vision, if you look at the internet, the global internet, everything is connected nowadays. And presently we do have more than 3 billion people connected to the internet, and still there are 4 billion that are not connected, so we need to find ways how we can get them connected. So as a vision, we like to see more people connected, but this also means that once we have more people connected, we will also be having more machine or devices, all of them connected to the internet. So when we talk about Internet of Things, we are referring to computers, networks, and things. But basically the concept of connecting machines, this is not a new concept. If you just take a look, for example, during the 70s, we already had, let's say, machines that could, let's say, monitor and control certain, how do you call that? Certain devices. So, so this is not something new. We already had those kind of things back in the 70s. If you take a look, for example, we have here a Carnegie Mellon Internet Coke machine. Back then, during the 80s and the 90s, people were looking for ways, and especially at the, this was at the university, they were, it was a challenge each time to go outside, and you're not sure if the Coke is cold enough. So they had a machine. They connected this machine to the internet back then to monitor let's say the status of all those bottles or cans of Cokes that were, let's say, in a particular machine. And also there were some sensors that would give you, let's say, indication this Coke is cold enough or it's not. So these are not new ideas. We have been using these concepts for a while. You have also what you call the Trojan room coffee pot. This was basically at what's the name of that university? I just forgot the name. Yes, this was also at a university, a very famous university. And as you may know, researchers, they cannot function without coffee, right? Most of them, they need coffee to do what they're doing. And here you had the same challenge again. I mean, you had one Cambridge, that's Cambridge.
MIT.
Yes, that's the name of the university. So they had a particular room called the Trojan room, and outside of that room, they had the coffee pot. And all these researchers, they didn't want to go outside each time to check if the water was hot enough in order for them to make the coffee. So what they did, they just put a camera to monitor, let's say, the coffee pot. And that's why we can say this was the first version of the webcam. So they were just sitting within the room doing the kind of stuff they were doing, and from there they can just monitor the coffee, say, okay, it was hot enough, so they can go outside and make the coffee. And also we have seen, for example, in the 90s, this was also at a trade show, one of ICT trade show, where they have shown that you can connect a toaster to the internet. And back then, you still had to put, let's say, the bread into the toaster. But just a few years later, someone came with another invention by building a robotic crane, which was able then to put all those bread in the toaster. So these are not new things. I mean, we have been using computer machines and things and connecting them all together. So if Internet of Things is not new, why are we talking about it right now? So there are a few things going on, and we have seen that the scenario globally has changed. For example, ubiquitous connectivity. Nowadays we do have internet. Most people have, okay, still we have 4 billion of people are not connected to the internet. But generally speaking, we do have internet connectivity. We see also the adoption of IP numbering, IPv4, IPv6, IPv4 on the highest level is already fully allocated, but we have let's say IPv6, and we're promoting IPv6 right now. Something else, we see that computers are becoming cheaper, computing power, they're becoming cheaper and cheaper. We are seeing also that all these devices are becoming smaller. Whereas in the past, you had to build a very large device to do certain things. Nowadays, you can just do that whole functionality in a just smaller device, doing even more than what we used to do in bigger devices. And we see also some very powerful data analyzers. So you can analyze a lot of data. And also we see the rise of what we call the cloud computing that Bevel did highlight this morning. So all these together give it the right foundation for us to be focusing on Internet of Things. Now there are a few challenges when we talk about Internet of Things. And these challenges can be divided in a few groups. For example, with security, privacy, interoperability and standards, legal, regulatory and rights, emerging economies and development. Let's take a look at security, for example. Security is a very, and especially when you talk about cybersecurity, is a very broad area. Basically, if we would like to address all challenges with respect to cybersecurity, we need to break this down in a few smaller areas. And normally, we can break this down in, let's say, 8 areas. The first area, that is what we call securing the link. The way how the internet functions, the way how it was designed by engineers back then, researchers at universities, it didn't have any security mechanism embedded into it, because there was no need to do that. They were operating in what we call a trusted environment, so there was no need to secure all those packets that they were sending to each other. For example, it's only me sending a packet to Bevel, and there is no one else in the room. There is no need for me to secure that packet because it will reach Bevel. There is no Albert there that can do something really strange with that packet. So this was the point of departure back then when they drafted, or not drafted, when they developed the internet. So the second area, and on each of these areas we can spend a whole week just focusing on one of these areas. And there are mechanisms how we can, let's say, secure the link with encryption and other technologies. For example, securing the telecommunication infrastructure. That's just the telecommunication infrastructure. Let's say transmission. You can also secure, let's say, the where you have all those switches, facilities, etc., etc. So that's just the physical telecommunication infrastructure. We need also to secure the internet. Most of the times we're focusing on this, but there are other areas as well. And when we're talking about securing the internet, we are focusing on 2 main areas. Because the internet, let's say, consists of, let's say, 2 main areas. We have, let's say, the names that Albert did mention today. With DNSSEC, for example, we can protect all these names to ensure that when I'm trying to reach, for example, albert.com, I don't end up at john.tt, for example. So that is why we need to secure those names. But in addition to the names, we need to secure also the routes, because internet uses, let's say, routes to get from one place to the other. We need also to secure the computers themselves that we're using. We need to secure the applications. We need to secure the data, identity, and also we need to secure essential services. So that's just to give you an introduction when we talk about themes or areas that we need to secure when we talk about cybersecurity. So why is security quite important when we're talking about Internet of Things? It's very important because whenever you connect a given device to the internet, that device becomes a part of the global internet. So although you're connecting a given, let's say, device locally, but it becomes part of that whole global internet that we're using. And that means then that if you have poorly secure, let's say, devices, it can affect, let's say, the security and stability of the internet. So that is why we need to focus a lot on that to get things right. And it is expected, for example, by 2025, we will be having approximately 100 million devices connected to the internet through Internet of Things applications. So basically, this is very scary, right? If you think about it, all these devices that can bring a threat or cause threat to the global internet. So that is why we need to ensure that all these are secure. There are a few other areas as well. For example, not only the number of devices that we're using nowadays, but given that, for example, the volume of these devices that are identical, this also causes another challenge. For example, if you have only one particular device nowadays that can cause, let's say, a threat, just imagine what would happen if you have 1 million of all those identical devices doing their things on a given moment. So it's not only one device, but it's about a lot of devices all over the globe, same device, identical, trying to cause harm to the internet. For example, we have also, let me say, for example, if you have a fridge at home, a normal fridge, you can say, okay, this fridge doesn't work the way it should work. But when we talk about Internet of Things, you're not sure if that particular device device, yes, is working the way it should work. For example, if you have a fridge which has a lot of Internet of Things, let's say, devices connected to it, you may think as a human, okay, it is performing the way it's supposed to perform. But you're not sure about it because you don't have details about all those small devices that are connected to that fridge in this particular case. At Internet Society, for example, we focuses a lot on what we call the collaborative security approach, because we have realized that security, as I did mention before, if you just take a look at all those 8 areas, it's very difficult to address all these challenges only by one particular organization or one person or one government. So that is why we need to work all together. Governments, private sector, civil society, all of them work together trying to addressing the challenges that we are seeing nowadays. And we do have a document that's called Collaborative Security, and in which we are trying to promoting collaboration among all stakeholders. There is another challenge when it comes to Internet of Things, that is the privacy issues. For example, what is being done with all those data that are being collected from all these small devices? Just think about it. So you have a lot, 1 million or whatever devices, they are collecting data, and we're not sure what is being done with all these data. So it's very scary the way the world we are living in nowadays. And basically at Internet Society, what we're trying to do is to raise awareness while we are promoting a connected world, to raise awareness with respect to all these challenges that we see there. We know that surveillance, for example, has been an issue, and it's still a challenge nowadays. Countries are monitoring others, and all these things are going on. So the privacy issue is quite important in this regard when it comes to Internet of Things. And of course, as humans, we do have, let's say, basic rights that needs to be respected. That is why we are at least to show to policymakers what are the challenges out there. One of the things we have been focusing on is the economic, let's say, power of the internet. So that is why we need to have trust in the internet. If we don't trust the internet, no one is going to use the internet, and it becomes useless. And then, I mean, then we will be having some other challenges. So that is why we need to protect all these devices in order for us to have trust in the internet. Let me, for example, interoperability and standards. This is quite important. Internet Society, as I did mention before, through the Internet Engineering Task Force, is promoting what we call technical standards in order for the internet to function. So all these devices that we are connected to the internet, they should comply to a given standard if we would like to connect them to the internet. So that is why this particular area is quite important as well. And so far we have seen that it's all about interoperability. If we have devices and they cannot interconnect or work with the internet, then we don't have anything. Let me highlight a few legal issues as well. I did mention, for example, when data are being collected, we're not sure what is being done with all these data. And also, through which country all these data are being collected. That's another challenge. For example, right now there is a case going on whereby we can see how people have used, let's say, Internet of Things to do other things. You know, let me put it like that. For example, you know, for example, in the US and also in other countries, you have, let's say, on the highways, you have toll, right? That's toll, right? Mm-hmm. Where you can, when you need to pay, when you use that particular road. So you see all these cameras there, and they're taking pictures, and all these are connected to Internet of Things devices. So there was a particular case in the US where a certain gentleman thought that, for example, that his wife was unfaithful, and there was no way to prove that. So what he did was to enter into an agreement with those people working at those toll offices, and what they did was just to monitor on a given moment in time when this particular red car was going through, right? And it was not only to monitor, for example, in this case, the license plate, but it was also to monitor who was sitting next to that gentleman, and also where they were heading, given that there was like a motel just a few blocks there in the vicinity. So we see here how we can misuse, let's say, Internet of Things, you know? So, of course, I mean, all these toll roads, all these kind of things, they were not built for those kind of things. But nowadays, you do have lawyers, very smart, and they come with all kind of other ways how they can still do what they think they should do. So this is just one example that we see where we are heading and how this world is becoming each time a threat or very difficult for us to maintain what we have been doing so far. There are good things as well. For example, Internet of Things, we can use, for example, devices, let's say, to forecast, let's say, weather, and based on that also you can decide whether or not you're going to plant or whatever. especially in the developing world, we are seeing that a lot of Internet of Things devices are being used, especially in agriculture and some other areas. Of course, investment is very important when it comes to Internet of Things infrastructure. And in this regard, I think broadband is, although the theme of this event is not broadband, but I think broadband is very important, because if you're going to have, let's say, real broadband, then all these devices, they cannot function the way that they are supposed to function. And with broadband, I mean real broadband. I'm not talking about high-speed internet access. That's a difference. I've seen, for example, operators promoting 512K, and they're talking about broadband. That's not broadband. There are a few definitions out there with respect to broadband. I'm sure you guys are not doing this in Belize, so that's just an example. But there are a few definitions out there with respect to broadband, and I think when we talk about broadband, we should be focusing on that, because that's the foundation if you would like to have a more connected world and also Internet of Things development. So basically, there are a few areas that I would like for you to focus on. Internet of Things, it's happening. We have seen the whole world is connected, and especially with IPv6, I'm sure Mr. Curran is going to highlight that in a while. We are going to continue to have a more connected world. And if you have a more connected world with broadband and also with smart people, young generation out there, the only thing they do is just to think how they can do all kind of things, right? So if we give them that powerful tool, which is, let's say, broadband, and we give them IP numbering, this particular case, IPv6, and just let them use their imagination, they are able to do a lot of things. But we need to guide them as well. And that is why we need to focus on challenges that are out there with respect to Internet of Things. And I think if we just focus on all those, I think we will be having a connected world, but not only a connected world, but a connected world in a more secure connected world. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Shernon. You know, bringing home the point of the impact of the internet on daily life. And as the devices, the connected devices become more pervasive, the impact is greater. And there are opportunities and risks associated with that we could explore when you could think about what questions you might want to ask in a short while. But we'll move on to our next presentation. Yes, we move on to our next presentation, and the speaker is Mr. John Curran, who is the president and CEO of ARIN. One of the last few things Shernon mentioned was IPv6.